The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Summer music festivals are back. So to celebrate all this July, the Agenda in the Summer revisits conversations with a diverse cast of musicians and music experts. Tonight, Laurel Trainor from 2016, my first year at TVO.
Why do we make and listen to music? Is it simply entertainment, or does it actually do something for the brain? Researchers at McMaster University are looking into these questions. As director of the McMaster Institute for Music and the Mind and director of the LIVELab, Laurel Trainor is at the center of this research. She is also a professor in the Department of Psychology, Neuroscience, and Behavior at McMaster. Welcome. You are really, really busy.
I enjoy it a lot.
I'm so glad that you're here. So why study the neuroscience behind music?
Well, music is very interesting. It's so ubiquitous, it's everywhere that we sort of take it for granted. But music is ancient. There are bone flutes from over 30,000 years ago, and probably people were producing music long before that. Even today, people spend a lot of time and energy on music. The music industry is, $15 billion a year industry.
15 billion?
Yeah, it's been estimated people spend about 13 years of their life listening to music. So there's a big question of why do we do this? Why did we develop music in the first place? And what does it do for us?
And why did we develop it?
Well, there are probably a number of answers to that question. But certainly if you look at where do we have music, under what circumstances do we make music, it's almost always social. So we have music at weddings, we have music at parties, we have music at religious ceremonies, the military uses music. Basically, we seem to use music whenever we want to bring people together, to feel affiliated with a social group. We use music when we want to feel a common emotion.
So what's happening in the brain when we hear music?
Well, when you listen to music, first of all, your auditory system has to process the sound, and that can be very complicated. And then further to that, parts of the music, aspects of the music, affect your limbic system, which has to do with emotional responses. When you simply listen to a musical rhythm, it not only activates your auditory cortex, but it activates your motor areas that have to do with movement. So you've probably experienced when you listen to a piece of music, it makes you want to move. Even if you're not moving, your motor system that controls your movement is being primed as if you were going to move. So it encompasses that part of the brain. And then the frontal, prefrontal areas of the brain that have to do with attention and motivation and monitoring and interpretation and memory and thinking about what the music means and how it's affecting you. So music seems to really activate the whole brain.
So if you hear a song that, was something that you heard when you went through a difficult part of your life, it's not surprising that you might start to cry.
Yes, I mean, you can certainly cry to a non-familiar song too, which we can talk about some of the ways that can happen. But also music has strong ties to what we call autobiographical memory. So your memories about things that happened to you. So if there was a song that was particularly prominent at a certain period in your life and you hear that song, it will activate those memories.
It takes you back.
It takes you back.
So much of your research takes place at the LIVELab at McMaster University. What does this facility do?
Well, the LIVELab is unique in the world. It's actually a concert hall, a fully functioning concert hall, a small 100-seat venue. But it's equipped with a bunch of technology that allows us to delve into great depth about how musicians produce music, how they play together, how audiences react, how audiences influence what happens to the performers. So first of all, it has amazing acoustics. We went to great lengths to build it to be sound isolated from the outside, so it's very, very quiet. It's sound treated, so it's very low reverberation. So it's kind of the opposite of a cathedral. It's like a blank, an auditory blank slate. And then within that, we have this amazing sound system, microphones throughout the space that pick up whatever music or other sounds are going on. In real time, we can process echoes and feed that back through the 75 loudspeakers that are distributed through the space. So we can calculate the echoes, for example, to make it sound like a cathedral.
Wow.
We can make it sound like a subway station. We can make it sound like you're outside. So we have incredible control of the acoustic environment, and we can measure the effect that that has on people. So everything from how does it affect how musicians play? How does it affect the experiences of the audience? It's being used for pedagogy. So how do you learn in a noisy environment compared to a quiet environment? So that's one of the technologies we have in there. We also can measure EEG, which is brain waves, and we can measure them in musicians and in up to 30 audience members at the same time.
Really?
So we can figure out how the brain is encoding different things that are going on. We can look at how, we know a lot about how individual brains process music, but almost nothing about how people play music together. So if you think about, if you have to play music with somebody, not only do you have to anticipate what notes you want to play or sing and plan those motor movements ahead of time to accomplish that, but now you have to also be aware of what your fellow musicians are going to do.
You have to be in sync.
You have to be in sync, and you can't wait to hear what they're going to do because it's too late. You've got to be with them when they're doing it, and you need some time to plan those movements. So you actually have to build in your brain models that are predicting not only what you're going to do next, but what they're going to do next. And so basically what we think happens is your brain is constantly making these predictions, and you plan your movements. You play your note a certain way at a certain time to fit into those predictions. And if you're off, then you have to do error correction in real time so that the next note is not off.
And the audience doesn't see anything happen. Yeah.
It's all happening inside our amazing brains. But with the EEG, we can monitor that. And we can also look at how much of that activity is mirrored in the audience. So one of the interesting things is people like to go to live concerts when we could sit at home. And in many venues, actually, you get better sound at home than you would in the concert hall, but people like to go to the concert hall.
Why do people, is it like a social thing, or does it sound better live? Or?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's the acoustics, because you can recreate very good acoustics without being in a concert hall. I think a lot of it is social. So not only are the brains of the musicians syncing up, but the brains of the audience members are syncing up as well. And you're experiencing this common thing with other people, and that's a very powerful experience.
And music is very important with infants. Why study the effect of music on children?
Well, one of the interesting things is not only is music universal across all human societies, but singing to babies is universal. And so this attracted my attention, well, it's almost 30 years ago. And it was an activity that was performed largely by women and considered not really very important for anything. But if you think about it, why would everybody around the world be doing this? So we started to look at what are babies processing, and they're processing a lot in the music. And then why are mothers doing it? So we looked at the circumstances under which mothers sing to babies and fathers sing to babies. And it happens when they want to soothe the baby. It happens when they want to rouse the baby's attention to look at interesting things in the world, or draw their attention to their body, playing with their toes or whatever, and when they want to communicate with the baby. So it was all around social interaction and emotional regulation. Babies are notoriously bad at regulating their state. If they're crying, they really need someone to come and help soothe them. And music, and the things that accompany music, like rocking, rhythmic rocking, those are some of the best ways to soothe the baby.
Does it matter what kind of music is playing?
We have not found that it matters what kind of music is playing, whether it's classical or jazz or pop. The most important thing seems to be this communication between the baby and the caregiver. And so whatever the caregiver likes, they probably should play that, because they're going to be the happiest.
How about Sabbath?
Well, you know, the baby's not going to understand the words. So, and actually, if you look at some of the lyrics of some lullabies, they're not that pleasant either. You know, when the bough breaks,
they're
the baby
scary,
will fall.
yeah.
They can be really scary. Yeah. The baby isn't aware of the words. Yeah.
You brought us a clip of one of your studies with babies and music. Tell us what we were looking at here.
Yeah. Well, here we were interested in rhythm and social interaction. So in adults, one of the things that happens when you experience music with someone else is you start to move in sync to the music. And if someone else is also moving in sync to the music, you're moving in synchrony with that person. And in adults, we know that that experience leads adults to become socially affiliated. Just after moving in sync with somebody for a short time, you like them better, you trust them more, you'll cooperate more with them if you're playing a game. And so we were interested in how early these social effects could be seen in babies. So these babies, what we did is we placed them in a carrier and facing forward, and one person just bounced the baby according to the beat track that they were hearing over their headphones. The baby, that was synced up so that the baby was bouncing to Twist and Shout by the Beatles. So that baby's having this nice experience of being bounced. They're facing an experimenter, and the experimenter that they're facing, in some conditions, she bounces in sync with them, and in other conditions, she bounces at the wrong tempo. So they're not bouncing in synchrony. And so after just 3 minutes of this experience with this strange experimenter, we see how willing the baby is to help the experimenter. So these are 14-month-olds. It's about the youngest age that you can get them to do overt helping. But for example, if the experimenter accidentally drops the crayon she's using, the baby has 30 seconds in which to pick up the crayon and give it back to her. Okay? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the interesting thing is that the rates of helping double just after 3 minutes of bouncing in synchrony with that person. So the babies that bounced out of sync were much less likely to help the experimenter.
That's really fascinating. What are the social benefits of engaging babies with music?
Well, as you can see, it's one of the ways that we develop social affiliation. So if you look in a daycare setting or a kindergarten setting, a good teacher will use music a lot.
I know one song, clean up, clean up.
Exactly,
Everybody
exactly.
clean up.
If you just said to the baby, okay, it's time to clean up, let's clean up, you might get some compliance. But if you have a song and everybody's singing the song, everybody knows that, it becomes associated with that activity, and you get cooperation among all these kids who otherwise might be off doing their own thing.
Does this extend into adulthood?
It does.
Oh.
Yeah, it does. It's no mistake that we have music at parties. You know, some corporations are now having sing-songs, corporation songs and so on, because it does lead to affiliation and cooperation.
Will these kids grow up to become musicians?
Not necessarily. Everyone, in my mind, is a musician in the sense that there are very few people who don't like music, who don't appreciate music. In modern society, where we have all this technology, where we can listen to other people's music, you know, through recordings and the internet and so on, it's pretty unusual in the history of the human race. So most of the time, we've had to make our own music. And people still enjoy that, you know, even if you're not a professional musician. Kids, teenagers get together and, you know, have the band in the basement. But even older people really enjoy listening to music and going to concerts.
In my day, it was sharing mixtapes.
Yes. Yeah.
We have another clip here of a mom singing a song to her baby that went viral 3 years ago.
I don't want you to come round here no more. I beg you for mercy. You don't know how strong my weakness is, or how much it hurts me. 'Cause when you say it's over with her, I want to believe it's true.
Oh my gosh, those cheeks.
It's making us cry too.
I know, it's making me emotional. Why would the baby respond so emotionally?
Yeah. Well, music has this effect on us. I think it's a big area of research now, how music creates these emotional responses in us. It's clear that it does. So in adults, we know that the striatal areas of the brain that are associated with reward for food and sex and so on are activated by music that moves us emotionally. So music uses the same pathways in the brain as other experiences that we have that move us emotionally. And that's almost certainly true in infants as well. Part of it is that mother has a beautiful voice, right?
She does.
And there's a certain timbre of that voice, and some of the studies that we've done show that infants are very sensitive to timbre. They prefer infant-directed type singing over adult-directed singing. They prefer that loving tone of voice over a harsh tone of voice. So they're very sensitive to the quality of the voice. But they're also sensitive to other things in the music that cause emotions in us. And one of those big ones is expectations. So in a way, we can think of the brain as an organism that is constantly predicting its future. Okay, so as you're listening to me talking, your brain, subconsciously, you're probably not aware of it, but your brain is continually predicting what I was going to say what note, but what word I'm going to say next. And most of the time, you're pretty accurate at knowing what word I'm going to say before I've said it. But if I say something strange, like if I suddenly say polka-dotted spider, your brain went, whoa, what happened there? I didn't predict that. Yeah. And there are all kinds of processes going on that we can measure with EEG when you don't predict correctly. And music makes use of that. So the same thing in music, we know often, certain chords or certain notes we expect to come next. And if you change that a little bit, that's where you often get the really emotional responses. So it can be an unexpected chord or a note in a piece. It can be something happening at a different time. So the piece really should end here, a phrase should end here. You're expecting that, but it doesn't. It goes on a little bit longer. And that creates an emotional response in you. So anything that is a little bit unpredicted sets up this cascade of processes in the brain to deal with that. And it really relies on evolutionarily ancient mechanisms in the brain that created emotions when we didn't correctly predict things. Because, if you're out in the jungle and there's a tiger and you think it's, a friendly gazelle,
you're dead.
You're dead. So there's a huge premium placed on correct prediction.
It's fascinating because I know that in the music world, they have producers who have perfected a formula for having a successful hit song. Mm-hmm. So that's in line with what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. Music uses these parts of the brain that developed often for other things. Mm-hmm. But it makes use of them in creating emotional responses in us.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. You also study the way musicians interact on stage with each other. What did you hope to learn from this study?
Yeah, we had the privilege of working with two of Canada's finest string quartets, the Afiara Quartet and the Cecilia Quartet. And they, as musicians, are very interested in the neuroscience behind what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they can connect with audiences, and so on. Mm-hmm. And so we were interested there in, okay, there's four people, there's no conductor. Who follows who? Is it completely democratic and everybody follows each other equally? Or do you tend to have one person who's the leader of the group, like maybe the first violinist, and other people follow them? So there we used another capability of the LIVELab, which is our motion capture system. So we can place little reflective markers on people's bodies, and we have infrared cameras that reflect infrared light off these markers from different angles, and we can recreate three-dimensional renditions of the movements that people made. So we can look in detail at what these string quartet players, how they moved. Yeah. And by doing mathematical modeling, we can take the movements of one person and line them up with what another person is doing just a split second later, and we can say who is following who.
We actually have a clip of that. Can we take a look at that?
Yeah.
What are some of the benefits from this research?
Well, We think that music actually can be used in a lot of situations to promote health. So first of all, as we talked about with babies, we've done longitudinal studies where we measured infants over time who are in music classes with their parents or not. And the infants who are in the music classes show better cognitive development, better language development, better social skills. So just incorporating music into the curriculum for children has benefits. Beyond that, this rhythmic sort of synchronization that I've talked about as being so important, in many developmental disorders, there's a disruption of those processes. So dyslexia, for example, which manifests as a difficulty reading and processing speech sounds, but it seems like a core deficit in dyslexia is not hearing or not being able to process the rhythmic patterns of syllables as they unfold, making it difficult to get into the language. It shows up in developmental coordination disorder. So these are kids who are sort of clumsy in movements. They also can manifest with generalized timing deficits, and music may be able to help them as well. Attention deficit disorder. Music can calm them down. It can give them a scaffold on which to process information. Autism. So kids with autism are very attracted to music, much more so than language, actually. And I think what the music does for them is, for them the sensory world is very disorganized and very disjunct. They have trouble filtering, and what the rhythmic regularity of music does is it gives their brain a scaffold on which to hang the information that's coming in, whether it's speech or music. So music has tremendous possibilities for helping children with all kinds of developmental disabilities.
And if we were to replace those musicians that we saw earlier with a jazz ensemble and just allow them to improvise, what would that change? Would it change anything?
That clip we saw was actually Lila Bialy, not a string quartet, which is a jazz group, and we're very interested in that as well. And improvisation is an amazing thing that we have not a lot of understanding of yet, but this is just being able to create the music on the fly. And what it seems to involve is a particular configuration of processing in the frontal and prefrontal areas that's not unlike the sort of altered states you can get into when you meditate. So it seems like what happens there is people are very aware of themselves and their autobiographical side of themselves, but they've kind of turned off their immediate error monitoring. So it's as if they're not worrying if they're going to make a mistake or what people are going to think about their music. They're kind of off in a zone where they're just very aware of what they're doing in the moment, which is also, something that probably could benefit a lot of us.
To what extent has music helped the human species evolve?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting and very difficult question. Music has been around for a long time. Yeah. I suspect that it came into being because we are a very social species. We cannot survive on our own. We really rely on other people. So not only for creating technologies and so on, but in our day-to-day living, we need to interact with other people. And that's really one of the big reasons why we've been successful as a species. And music was probably a big contributor to that. So this encouraging us to move together, to interact together, to do things together, to work together. If you sing a song, it's easier to work with other people. So music probably played a big role in how we became such a social species.
If music plays such a big role in our lives, why aren't we all musicians and singers? I mean, I think I can sing in the shower, but it totally depends on who's listening.
Well, I think in a way we are. And if you look around the world or you look through history, everyone sang and everyone played music. It's only in the sort of last 100 years or so that we have this technology that allows us to listen to music without having to necessarily produce it. But even when you listen to music, you're using a lot of the same brain areas that you would use to make music. And many people can't help but sing along. I think we would all be happier if we did sing, in fact.
You're a musician, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
And what do you play?
I play flute.
Flute? Yeah. And do you think that having that side helps you with what you're doing now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When I was younger, I was one of those people that could never make up their mind what they wanted to do in life. Be a musician, be a scientist. And I kind of went back and forth for a while, but I can't imagine a life without music.
Now you hear a lot of parents who are trying to get their kids to go into, play the piano, get your piano lessons. Does that help kids in the long run?
It can. One of the main things, I think, is to try to make it enjoyable. There's nothing worse than taking something as amazing as music and having children not want to do it. So it's a lot of hard work to learn to play an instrument. There's no doubt. It takes motivation and patience and time. But kids will do that if they're motivated. So if there's some piece that they really want to play or something they really want to sing, they will spend endless hours trying to perfect that. If someone comes in from the outside and says, you're going to do this, I don't care if you like it or not, that's probably not the best approach, but absolutely music can help kids.
Are we the only species that makes music?
That's under a lot of debate right now. We probably are the only species that makes music, certainly in the way that we do. Our closest genetic relatives do not. So if you look at the great apes, the bonobos, the chimpanzees, they could care less about music. They really don't do music in any sense like we do. You have to go very far away. So there's some birds who sing, and they use it in social circumstances, and they use it somewhat similarly to how we do.
Does it come to them when they hear it? Like, I know parrots, does it comfort them?
I assume it does because they use it in mating, they use it in interacting with their young. It's hard to know for sure what they're feeling, but a few species who are the vocal learning birds actually will move to music. But birds are very distant from us genetically. I mean, we split off from them a long time ago. So probably we developed music independently and they developed what they do independently. But there's some similarities in what they do and what we do.
Laurel, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
I could speak to you for another half an hour. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Coming up on the agenda in the summer.
I think I've had a much healthier writing life because I've had the dogs, honestly. I think that because of the loneliness that's kind of built into writing, my life could have gone a different way, but having the companion of the dogs and having the dogs pull me out of writing to go for a walk or be in their world, be in the immediate world has really, I think, kept me healthy.
And that is tonight's agenda in the summer. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thanks for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. And we'll see you again next time.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.